It was a cloudy Thursday evening in downtown Chicago. The kind of day when the streets gleamed with leftover rain and neon signs blinked over puddles like dreams that refused to die. Office workers rushed past in their polished shoes, earbuds in, eyes glued to their phones. But amidst the glass towers and honking cars, one girl slowed down. Her name was Lena Rivers. Lena wasn't rich. She worked at a modest marketing firm as a junior assistant, pulling long hours for a paycheck that barely covered her rent in a shared apartment. Most days, she skipped breakfast and settled for a plain turkey sandwich and cheap coffee from a cart outside her building. Today was no different, except that her heart felt heavier than usual. She'd just gotten off a call with her landlord, who informed her that the rent was going up again, and her boss had passed her over for a promotion she had practically bled for. Dragging her feet toward her favorite corner bench under a flickering street lamp, Lena unwrapped her sandwich with a sigh. Just as she took a bite, a low, gravelly voice interrupted her thoughts. "Excuse me." She looked up. Standing in front of her was a man in his late 50s, maybe early 60s. He had a gray beard, eyes sunken with exhaustion, and wore a jacket so worn out it looked like it had fought wars. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said, looking more ashamed than hungry. "But I haven't eaten in 2 days. If you have even a crumb to spare," Lena blinked. She had walked past dozens of homeless people before, like most people did in big cities, head down, no eye contact. But something about this man's voice stopped her. It wasn't desperation. It was dignity. Even in his state, he carried himself like someone who used to matter. Without a second thought, Lena broke her sandwich in half and handed the bigger piece to him. The man hesitated. "Are you sure?" Lena smiled softly. "Of course." Their fingers brushed as they both held the sandwich for a moment, an unspoken exchange that felt strangely important. "Thank you," he whispered. "No one sees me anymore. You did." She nodded, a lump forming in her throat. "What's your name?" "Samuel. Just Samuel." "Nice to meet you, Samuel. I'm Lena." And then a low rumble. Tires on wet pavement. Lena turned her head. From the far end of the street, a sleek black limousine rolled to a silent stop at the curb. Its windows were tinted, its engine barely audible. The kind of car you didn't expect to see on this particular street. The back door opened slowly. A man stepped out. He was tall, sharply dressed in a designer suit, and wore expensive sunglasses even though the sun had disappeared. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, staring at them. Lena noticed that the man wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Samuel. The homeless man's hand trembled slightly around the sandwich. His eyes narrowed, and for a split second, Lena saw something flash across his face. Recognition. The suited man began walking toward them. The air seemed to thicken as the man in the black suit approached. His Italian leather shoes clicked crisply against the sidewalk, cutting through the hum of traffic and murmuring pedestrians. He stopped just a few feet from them, his gaze fixed. Not on Lena, but on Samuel. Lena could feel the tension build, like the city itself had taken a breath and was holding it. Samuel slowly stood up. Not in fear, not in submission, but with a straight back and quiet resolve. Something about his posture changed, like he was shedding the weight of the streets, if only for a moment. "You've found me," Samuel said quietly. The man in the suit took off his sunglasses, revealing sharp hazel eyes. They weren't cruel, just cold and deeply calculating. "You knew we would," the man replied. Lena's head was spinning. What was happening? Who were these men? Was this Samuel in some kind of trouble? She stepped forward instinctively. "Is something wrong?" The suited man gave her a brief glance, as if registering her presence for the first time. Then he looked back at Samuel. "She doesn't know?" he asked. Samuel said nothing. "I'm sorry," Lena interrupted. "I think you should leave. He's done nothing wrong." The man actually smiled at that. Not kindly, more like an amused professor, watching a student try to solve an equation without all the variables. "He's not who you think he is, miss." "Lena," she replied cautiously. "Lena," the man repeated. "You're a kind person. Naive, perhaps, but kind. You should walk away now. This isn't your world." Samuel's voice, still steady, cut through the tension. "She's already part of it, whether you like it or not." A silence fell between the two men. They were clearly connected deeply and possibly dangerously. But Lena could feel it. This wasn't a random reunion. This was fate catching up. "What's going on, Samuel?" she asked, this time more firmly. Samuel looked at her. His expression was hard to read, somewhere between regret and defiance. "I wasn't always like this," he said. "I used to be someone important." The man in the suit scoffed. "You still are important. That's the problem." "I walked away from that life," Samuel replied. "For good reason." "And left chaos behind," the man said sharply. Lena looked between them. "Can someone please explain what's going on?" The man in the suit took a slow breath and turned to her fully. "Samuel Grant," he said, "was once the majority shareholder of Glenrock International Holdings, a global empire worth billions. He vanished from the board 10 years ago, declared dead by the courts after he disappeared in a plane crash over the Andes." Lena's jaw dropped. "Wait, what?" "He faked it," the man continued. "Walked away from everything. Wealth, power, family. No one knew why. Until today." She turned to Samuel, disbelief flooding her. "Is this true?" she asked. Samuel nodded slowly. "Yes, I left, on purpose. I couldn't take the corruption, the lies, the greed. I wanted to disappear, to find something real, something human." "And you found that," the suited man said bitterly. "In a sandwich?" Samuel ignored the jab. "I've lived a life more honest on the streets than I ever did in boardrooms." "But now," the man pressed, "your signature is needed. The company is in chaos. There are vultures trying to dismantle everything you built. If you don't come back now, it all collapses." Lena was frozen. Her world was shifting too fast. One moment, she was eating a sandwich with a homeless man. The next, she was standing between a billionaire in hiding and a man who could have been sent by Wall Street itself. "I'm not going back," Samuel said. The man's jaw clenched. "Then she becomes part of the fallout." Lena's stomach turned. "What do you mean?" The man stepped forward. "You've spoken to him, touched him. You'll be watched now, questioned, maybe worse. There are people who'd pay millions to know where Samuel Grant is, and you've just walked straight into the center of it." Samuel stepped between them, his eyes like steel. "If anything happens to her, anything, I will come back. Not to help the company, but to burn it to the ground." The suited man smiled faintly. Still dramatic as ever, he turned back to the limo. "You have 48 hours. Make your choice." And just like that, the man climbed into the car and the door shut with a soft click. The limo pulled away from the curb, melting into traffic like a ghost in the rain. Lena stood there, shaking slightly. Samuel placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry," he said. "You didn't ask for any of this." She looked at him, this man she had pitied just moments ago. Now she didn't know what to feel. "I don't understand what's happening," she said. "But I know one thing." She looked down at the half sandwich still in her hand. "You weren't the only one trying to find something real." Lena barely slept that night. She lay on her thin mattress in her tiny studio apartment, staring at the cracked ceiling fan, its blades slicing through the silence like broken promises. Her half-eaten sandwich still sat on her cluttered kitchen counter now, more like evidence of a moment that changed everything. The man she had shared it with wasn't just homeless. He was Samuel Grant, presumed dead billionaire. A man whose name once appeared in Forbes. A man who had walked away from billions to sleep in alleyways and disappear into the city's noise. And now, he had reappeared because she saw him. Lena wasn't sure what terrified her more, the mystery surrounding Samuel, or the threat left behind by the man in the limo. The next morning, Lena returned to the same bench. She wasn't sure if he'd be there. Part of her thought he'd vanish again. But just as she approached, she saw him, sitting quietly, sipping coffee from a paper cup someone must have given him. "Did you sleep at all?" Samuel asked without turning. "Barely," she replied. "You?" "I don't sleep much anymore." They sat in silence for a moment. "You lied," she finally said, not accusingly, just honest. "I did," Samuel replied. "Why me?" She asked. "Why now?" Samuel looked at her. "You didn't see a bum. You saw a human being. I've had money thrown at me out of pity. I've had people pretend not to see me. But you looked me in the eyes. You broke your only lunch in half, without hesitation. That moment reminded me who I used to be." Lena crossed her arms, still trying to hold on to something stable. "So now what? That guy said you have 48 hours. What happens after that?" "If I don't return," Samuel said, "the board will collapse. The vultures will tear apart the empire I once built. But more than that, someone will try to trace you." "Me? Why?" "Because you're the only person I've spoken to in 10 years. The only person who could lead them to me again." Lena swallowed hard. "So I'm in danger?" "Possibly. From who?" Samuel looked around before leaning closer. "There are people inside Glenrock who never wanted me to return. They run shell operations, illegal deals under the company's name. They're powerful, and they're scared that if I come back, their world ends. So, what do you do? I either vanish again, and they win." He paused. "Or I go back, burn out the rot, and take control of my life again." Lena stared at him. "And me?" "If I go back, I can protect you. Officially. Publicly. But it means you'd be pulled into a world you never asked for. You'd be a face on a screen, a name in articles. Some will love you. Most will tear you apart." Lena leaned back on the bench. "This is unreal." "I know," Samuel said softly. "And if you don't go back, then I run, again, and I make sure you're never linked to me. But that man, the one in the limo, he wasn't lying. They'll still try to find you, silence you, because now you know." Lena closed her eyes. "You gave me a sandwich and a whole mess I didn't ask for." Samuel chuckled quietly. "It's a gift and a curse." Then he reached into his worn jacket and pulled out a tiny object, a sleek, encrypted flash drive. "This," he said, "contains records, real records. Hidden transactions, fake subsidiaries, evidence of corruption inside Glenrock. If I disappear, and something happens to me, I want you to take this to someone named Jonathan Clark. He's an investigative journalist. He'll know what to do." Lena took it carefully. "Why trust me with this?" Samuel smiled. "Because you looked me in the eye and saw more than a broken man." She held the drive tightly. It felt heavier than any USB ever should. Heavier with truth. That evening, as Lena left work, she noticed something strange. A black SUV parked across the street. Same one she'd noticed that morning. 2 men inside. One of them, she swore, had been standing outside her building when she left for lunch. Her stomach sank. She turned the corner fast, her heart racing, slipping into a pharmacy, and ducking behind a shelf of shampoo bottles. From the window, she could still see the SUV. They weren't following. Yet Lena reached for her phone and texted Samuel. "They're watching me." No reply. She waited. Still nothing. Then she remembered. Samuel didn't carry a phone, and now she was alone with a flash drive that could bring down billionaires. Lena didn't go home that night. Instead, she rode the subway to the far end of the city, transferring lines twice, keeping an eye on every person who entered the car. The paranoia was real and earned. She had watched too many thrillers to know what a tale looked like. And now she was living it. She got off near Jefferson Park, far from her apartment, and ducked into an all-night diner that smelled of burnt toast and cheap coffee. Sitting in the farthest booth, back to the wall, Lena opened her bag and touched the flash drive again just to remind herself it was real. She was scared, but not running. Not yet. She picked up the landline behind the diner's counter and dialed the number Samuel had scribbled for her. Jonathan Clark, investigative journalist known for exposing corporate corruption and disappearing from public view afterward. One ring. Two. Then a voice answered, wary, tired, but sharp. Clark, my name's Lena Rivers. Samuel Grant told me to call you. There was a pause, long enough to make her wonder if the line had gone dead. Then, where are you? Safe. For now. Do you have it? Yes. Another pause. Then the voice sharpened. You're being watched? I think so. Black SUV. 2 men. Been following me since yesterday. Okay, listen carefully. Get to the West train station by 4 a.m. Locker 312. Drop the drive. Don't look back. Don't wait for me. Just walk away. But you wanted help. This is how it works. If they catch you with it, it's not just Samuel in danger, it's you. Click. The line went dead. Lena stared at the receiver, heart pounding. She had no idea what she was doing anymore. Just 2 days ago, she was worried about her electricity bill. Now, she was ferrying evidence that could bring down an empire. At 3:45 a.m., Lena arrived at the train station. It was quiet, damp, echoing with distant footsteps. She found locker 312 and, with trembling fingers, opened it and placed the flash drive inside a small manila envelope. Just as she closed the door, she heard a familiar voice. Drop something important, Miss. Rivers? She turned around slowly. It was the man from the limo. Same black suit, same cold eyes. Except this time, he wasn't alone. 2 other men flanked him, dressed in black, hands probably resting on concealed weapons. Lena stepped back. Stay away from me. We don't want to hurt you, he said calmly. But you've put yourself in the middle of a very dangerous situation. I didn't ask to be dragged into this. No one ever does. But here you are. Lena's eyes darted toward the locker. You're too late. Maybe. He tilted his head. Maybe not. We'll see. Then he gestured to one of the men. A flash of movement. Hands grabbed her arms. She kicked, struggled. But it was too late. They pulled her toward a nearby black van idling by the curb. She screamed once before a hand covered her mouth. The city didn't even blink. She awoke in a room that smelled like leather and cold steel. No windows. Just a glass wall facing a single man sitting at a desk. Not the suited man from before. This one was different. Younger. Mid-40s. Clean-shaven. Polished. The kind of man who could charm investors while hiding monsters in his closet. He pressed a button. The glass slid open silently. Ms. Rivers, he said smoothly. My name is Victor Dane. I'm the acting CEO of Glenrock International. I don't care who you are, Lena snapped. Victor smirked. Oh, but you should. You've just disrupted the balance of a very powerful organization. You mean you've been looting a company while pretending the real owner was dead? Victor's eyes twinkled. You're sharper than you look. He stood, walking slowly toward her. You see, Samuel Grant was a genius, visionary even. But he was too moral, too soft. He wanted clean money, fair systems, transparency. Victor leaned in. That's not how the world works. Lena's jaw clenched. So you faked his death? Victor's smile dropped. No, that part was his choice. He ran. Left us to build the machine without him. And we did. By destroying lives? By becoming untouchable. He paced behind her. But then you gave him a sandwich. You made him remember who he was, and now he's thinking of coming back. You reignited the ghost we buried a decade ago. He turned. That's why you're dangerous. I'm just a girl, Lena whispered. Victor nodded. Yes, a girl who could ruin everything. Then, a new voice entered the room. Calm, deep, familiar. She's more than that. Victor froze. Lena turned toward the door, her breath caught in her throat. It was Samuel. Not in his ragged clothes, but in a suit. Dark navy, crisp, tailored, his gray hair combed back. His eyes tired but burning. You're making a scene, Victor, Samuel said. Let her go. Victor's jaw tightened. You showed up. I told you what would happen if you touched her. Samuel stepped forward. Now, you're going to let her walk out of here. Or I make Glenrock's sins public and tear down every part of this empire you twisted. Victor scoffed. You wouldn't dare, Samuel smiled. Try me. For a moment, the air in the room turned to ice. Victor Dane's smug expression faded just slightly as he stared at the man he thought was gone for good. Samuel Grant stood tall, unflinching in his freshly pressed suit. It had been 10 years since. He walked away from it all, but somehow, in that moment, he looked more in control than ever. You're bluffing, Victor sneered. You have no proof. You've been a ghost. A washed-up idealist sleeping in alleyways. I had no proof, Samuel said calmly, until I met someone brave enough to look me in the eye and hand me back my humanity. He turned to Lena, whose wide eyes filled with something stronger than fear. Now hope. Samuel continued, his voice like iron wrapped in velvet. You were so busy building your empire of shadows, Victor, you forgot something. I built the foundation. I still hold 51% of Glenrock's private shares. They never expired. They never transferred. Legally, I am still the majority stakeholder. Victor laughed hollowly. That doesn't mean anything unless you show up to the boardroom. Samuel stepped closer. Then schedule the meeting. Tomorrow, noon, and let every vulture in your pocket know I'm coming to clean house. Victor's confidence flickered. You wouldn't survive it. I already did, Samuel said. 10 years on the streets taught me more about truth than 100 board meetings ever could. I know who my enemies are now. And I know what I must become to stop you. He turned to Lena. She walks out of here, now. Victor exhaled slowly. And if I say no? Samuel leaned in. Then the drive she handed over to Jonathan Clark goes public within the hour. You lose everything, and I make sure your name is erased from the corporate world. Not just disgraced, erased. A slow silence. Stretched. Then Victor signaled to his men. Let her go. One of the guards stepped forward and unfastened Lena's restraints. She stumbled slightly, but Samuel was there instantly, steadying her. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I believed in you, she replied softly. That's why I stayed. By morning, headlines were already swirling. Samuel Grant returns from the dead. Glenrock's real founder stages corporate takeover. The woman who sparked a billionaire's return. Paparazzi crowded Lena's apartment. Journalists staked out the street. Her phone rang endlessly until she turned it off. She didn't ask for this, but she was in it now. Samuel had gone straight to Glenrock Tower. No disguises. No hesitation. As he entered the marble lobby, every employee turned to stare. Whispers followed him. Some bowed their heads in shame. Others, who remembered his leadership, smiled faintly. At noon, the boardroom filled. Victor sat at the head of the table, flanked by his yes-men, lawyers, and sycophants. But as Samuel entered, their confidence wavered. He wasn't just back, he was awake. Alive in ways money couldn't buy. "Gentlemen," Samuel said, placing his palm on the table, "I call this emergency meeting to order." Victor crossed his arms. "We're not obligated to vote today." "Oh, but you are," came a new voice from the corner. It was Jonathan Clark. Camera around his neck, briefcase in hand, and several investigative files now submitted to the SEC and IRS, implicating Glenrock's current leadership in international fraud, insider trading, and tax evasion. "I believe your shareholders would like to know where their billions went," Clark said, tossing the first folder onto the table. Samuel stepped forward. "Either vote now and restore the board under my leadership, or I take this evidence public. You have 60 seconds. Victor's face was pale. The room erupted into whispers. But one by one, hands began to rise. "Yes, yes, unanimous." Samuel was chairman once again. Victor tried to stand, tried to shout, but security was already waiting. As he was led from the room, he turned and snarled, "This isn't over, Samuel." Samuel simply replied, "It is for you." That evening, Lena met Samuel at a quiet rooftop overlooking the city. He was no longer the man she met on that rain-slicked bench. And yet, he still was. "I never thought one sandwich would start a revolution," she said with a laugh. Samuel smiled, watching the skyline. "I didn't need food that day. I needed to be seen, and you saw me. I just did what anyone decent would have done." "No," he said softly. "Most people would have walked past. But you changed the course of a billion-dollar empire with half a sandwich." Lena stepped closer. "So, what now?" Samuel looked at her. "I rebuild. Not the money, not the company, but the soul of it. And maybe, if you're willing, I'd like you to be a part of that." She blinked. "Me? You saw value where the world saw garbage. I want that kind of vision in my life, in this company, as a partner, and maybe, someday, more." Lena smiled, heart full. "You had me at turkey sandwich." They both laughed. The city lights flickered behind them like 1,000 second chances. 3 months had passed. Lena Rivers was no longer the invisible girl who sat alone on city benches with a modest sandwich. Her world had changed, but not in the loud, glamorous way the headline suggested. Yes, her name had been in articles. Yes, she had walked the halls of a billion-dollar empire. But what truly changed was inside. At Glenrock International's headquarters, the atmosphere had transformed. Gone were the fear-based meetings, the whispered threats in glass corridors, the hierarchy that worshipped power. Samuel had gutted the corruption and rebuilt from the inside out. He rehired old friends who had left when integrity became inconvenient, and promoted people who were never seen before. And at the center of it all was Lena. She wasn't just a media story anymore. She was now director of ethical outreach and corporate responsibility, a role Samuel created for her. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't power-hungry. But it was meaningful. Lena now led programs for homelessness reintegration, job training, and food outreach. She'd turned the darkest part of Samuel's exile into Glenrock's light. But not everyone embraced the change. Whispers remained. Old board members tried to stage quiet resistance. The press kept chasing romance rumors between Samuel and Lena. They called her the Sandwich Girl, both mockingly and admiringly. One morning, as she entered her office, Lena found a small envelope. On her desk. Inside was a handwritten note from Samuel. Asterisk. The world taught me that money builds kingdoms, but kindness builds legacies. Thank you for seeing a man when the world saw a ghost. Yours, S.G. Asterisk. Tucked inside the note was half a golden pendant, shaped like a sandwich. Handcrafted. Lena smiled, deeply moved. That evening, She found Samuel in the quiet gardens on the 54th floor rooftop, watching the horizon. The sun was setting again, just like the day they met. "You left this on my desk," she said, dangling the pendant between her fingers. He turned. "I thought it was fitting." "You know," she said softly, "sometimes I still feel like I'm living someone else's life." "No," Samuel replied, stepping closer. "This is your life now. You earned every bit of it." The girl who gave half her lunch to a stranger didn't know it would shake the stock market, but it did. That was always your power you gave, not expecting anything back. "I didn't give to a billionaire," she said. "I wasn't one when you gave it," he replied. There was a pause. The air between them hummed with unspoken things. Then Samuel reached into his pocket and pulled out the other half of the pendant. It clicked perfectly into hers. "No contract. No titles," he said. "But if I asked you to stay not just with Glenrock, but with me, what would you say?" Lena stared at the joined pendant, the sun reflecting off its surface like a quiet promise. "I'd say," she whispered, "I've already stayed. I'm just waiting for you to catch up." 1 year later, the bench was still there, the same street lamp, the same old corner. But now, it bore a new plaque that read, "Sometimes, all it takes is a sandwich and kindness to change the world." In honor of Lena Rivers and Samuel Grant, every Friday, Lena visited that bench, not as a celebrity, not as a director, just as herself. She'd bring 2 sandwiches. One for her, one for whoever sat down beside her, because she remembered something people often forget in glass towers and corporate elevators. The most powerful act in the world is to see someone when no one else does, and to believe that kindness still matters. The end.